Hello, viewers. Here is part two of the workshop on solution focused brief therapy by Chris Iveson and Biba Rebolj. This video starts with a question from Dr. Rabia Faruqi.
There you are. Do you want to unmute Rabia and say your question?
Yes, Chris, I just wanted to know about regarding major depressive disorder, because when we talk about the major depressive disorder, there are clients who are very helpless, they feel helpless, and hopelessness is very embedded in them because of the experiences, life experiences that they had. And if we want to talk about the miracle question, they have a lot of answers. Rather than going into that mode, they would have a lot of other options, like nothing could have ever happened in my life. So they would not be into indulging in these kind of questions, and they would not be into being motivated, or they don't have as such any hope in their life left due to the different circumstances. Because in our culture, there are circumstances like sometimes a patient come with major depressive and they are being abused sexually, or physically being abused, or had experienced domestic violence, and they are genuine cases. Like, we cannot deny the intensity of emotions or intensity of pains that they have experienced. So how we can indulge them into these kind of questions, and how we can make them feel that the betterment could occur, or a miracle could happen, because they are not in a mood to believe that any miracle or any change would ever come into life. Like, for example, if a female is being domestically abused or sexually abused in her life, they would, and it's a constant process, because they had a marital life and they cannot break because of different circumstances in our particularly in our culture. So what hope we expect them to bring, and what hope we can bring through these questions into them, and how we can give them any solution of the problem that they are facing.
Well, I think one of our assumptions that we make is that if a client is talking to us, there must be a good reason. If they're talking to us, there must be a good reason that they are. So this is something we learnt right very early on in our work. Our first research study, in fact, led us to take the view, to decide, it was a decision, take the view that everybody is motivated. Everyone who's talking to us is motivated for something that we have, as counsellors, as therapists, have to offer. So that was our assumption.
But sometimes they are, this is not the case. Like, they are not motivated, but rather the family is disturbed, or family dynamics is disturbed, and that is why they are being forced to come into the therapy. Because I have seen the clients when they are not into a therapy, and they feel that you cannot help us because our circumstances is such and such, or rather they are just coming for the catharsis purpose, that they can't share it with the family because family is not in a listening mode, and rather they are having a lot of pressure when they share their problems with the family members. So either
I can only answer what we would do. Do the people you see, can they refuse to see you?
No, they don't. It's not like that they refuse to see. They are coming and they want to share their feelings and emotions, but still they are in a...
So then I think it's just a question of skill. I worked with people on suicide watch in psychiatric hospitals who are actively trying to kill themselves even though they're in hospital. I worked with so many people who everyone else says they've lost hope. And I think part of the solution-focused job is when we ask this question, what are your best hopes from coming from us, from agreeing to talk with me, then their client will have somewhere some hope that something might be different. Some different way of managing life might be possible. And as professionals, whatever our model, whatever approach we have no right, I don't think, we have no right to give up our hope for our clients. So we would never give up our hope. And part of the job, and it's a part of the job which we've made sure we're successful at, is to this taxi driver question. Where to? If coming into this hospital, if having this conversation turns out to be useful, what difference are you hoping it will make? And within any culture, however awful somebody's circumstances are, I guess there are better ways and worse ways of handling it. And there are always choices somewhere along the line. I'm not diminishing the person's, the terribleness of somebody's life, but if they're talking to us, my assumption is that they're hopeful that there's some way forward, and we would do our best to help them describe it and move forward. I think that's all I can say, really. But it is a question of, it's not, this question, what are your best hopes, is a very, very, very difficult question to learn in a way that you can use it in these circumstances. But that's, if I was in your hospital, I would pretty well guarantee that I'd interview somebody and we'd be able to put together a solution-focused conversation. Because that's my job, that's what I've been doing for 30 years. So if I can't do it in those circumstances, I should go and give myself the sack. There's a question about suicide, not suicide, about schizophrenia, and how can we make people take responsibility? I think in solution focus, we don't try and make people take responsibility. We ask them for their outcome and we work towards that. And trust that will lead to a better way of living, which is likely to include responsibility. But I think if we have the agenda ourselves, then we're not being solution focused, and we're not going to, this isn't going to work with a client. It does require us to trust the clients more than the client needs to trust us. So, yeah. What other questions have we got? Can anybody see? Asir, can you see the questions? Look for
Yes,
any.
I actually have a question based on my experience that I've been having difficulty with. I think it is probably a question of skill, but so you know, if we were to role play, if you were to ask me what are my best hopes, I could demonstrate a client to you and
Okay.
role play a client to you.
Let's go.
Right. Okay.
So just give me an age and name of this client that you're going to role play.
Okay, Samina, 24. Fictitious name, obviously, but yeah, 24. Okay.
It's a 24-year-old woman?
Yes,
man?
girl, woman.
Okay. So, Samina, what are your best hopes out of this conversation?
What hopes could I have? You know, it's like I'm getting older. Can you imagine? I'm 24 right now, and I don't have a plan for the future. I don't know if I'm applying to grad schools. I don't know if and I don't have a job, and I'm rotting here, and my life is a mess, and I don't know what to make of this.
Okay. Okay, that sounds pretty tough. So, if this meeting turns out to be useful to you, what difference do you hope it might make?
See, that's what you're there for, Chris. That's why I've come to you. I mean, if I had the answers, why would I ask you?
Oh, yeah. And how would I know without asking you? Well, so, yeah, well, if it does work, if it does, okay. If you've got the answers, let's say you've got the answers and they're the right answers, what difference would you start to notice in your life?
Well, I'll be happier. I'll be more productive for a change, and not be rotting here like I'm doing all the time. And, you know, like sleeping the whole day. And the trauma that I've experienced recently with my house being burgled and me uh, barely escaping a rape attempt by the robbers, and then my uncle dying, all in these last 3 months. And on top of this COVID crap, it's like my life has been living hell.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a lot to be handling. So it's not surprising that you're feeling things are tough at the moment. So if you did begin to feel happier and more productive, what difference would that make, do you think?
I'd give anything for that. Just having a job, feeling more productive, feeling like I exist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's imagine that tonight while you're asleep, somehow things get sorted out in your head, that these past traumas don't go away. Obviously they don't go away, but somehow they get sorted in your head so they're not getting in the way of life anymore. What's the first thing you'd notice as you woke up tomorrow that told you that you were happy, you're regaining your happiness and regaining your productivity? What might you notice as you woke up tomorrow?
I'll probably head straight to the computer and start looking at graduate schools that I would like to go to.
Okay.
Probably look up, their websites, what kind of programs are available in English literature, and maybe apply for a residency.
Okay.
Not sure, but yeah.
Okay, so you've got lots of possibilities, lots of possible plans. So what time are you likely to get up tomorrow if you're waking up with a sense of returning happiness and productivity?
I would say at 10 instead
And
of
who's around? Who's at home? Who's at home with you?
my mother, she's as crazy as a bat, and yeah, she's another handful that I have to deal with.
Yeah. So how would your mother know? What would first sign to her that you've woken up with happiness coming back in your life, with productivity coming back in your life? Even though she's mad as a bat, how would she know that you were?
She would see that I'm not grumbling, I'm not frowning, not complaining like I do every day.
What would you be doing instead if you weren't grumbling, if you weren't complaining, if you weren't frowning?
I would be singing out loud.
Okay. Would your mother be surprised, or is that something you do sometimes anyway?
Not for the last few months. I don't think I've done that, but I used to do that a lot.
Okay. So she'd see her old daughter coming back.
I guess you could say that.
Would she be pleased to see you singing?
She would be very happy because she keeps insisting that I see my psychologist and that, she hopes for things to be better.
Uh-huh. And so how would she show that she was happy? How would your mother respond to you?
She would talk to me. She would show me her plants in the garden that she's obsessed about. And I would sort of pretend to be interested in those plants.
Oh, okay.
Just for her sake.
Okay. So you'd be feeling kind to your mother as well.
Yeah, well, I do feel kind to her, but I do think that sometimes she's a bit much. It's a bit too much.
So how have you kept the capacity to be kind to your mother when so much difficulties are going on in your own life?
See, because she's had the same difficulties, when a relative of mine dies, her relative dies. When her house was robbed, I was the only one who kept my cool. My mother was screaming and freaking out the robbers, and they were threatening her with their guns and so on. So I think she had a tougher time than me. So I do feel for her, but right now I don't feel like I have the capacity to show it.
Okay. So tomorrow, if things had worked out, you'd be showing that capacity again to be kind.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd do is hug her.
Okay, okay. So let's stop there. Let's
Brilliant.
see how we've got
Brilliant.
into it.
Thank you.
And somebody had a question. I just saw a little thing, a hand, a little note saying somebody had a hand. Who had their hand up? You unmute. Where am I? Someone had their hand up. Would you unmute yourself? Reveal yourself. Well, don't know who that was. Oh. Hello. We can't hear you, I'm afraid. The sound is a bit of a mess. Okay, we better just take another question. People might have questions about that interview or the other one. What about can somebody look at the chats, find a question? There's some nice comments there, but there's some questions.
There was a question from the audience, Chris, from Taib.
Yeah.
How to protect ourselves from negative energy of others.
I've got no idea. I don't know whether you have an idea, Biba. I think
Yeah, I always have ideas. Go on then.
Go on then.
Well, okay, maybe just to say, I'm a student of Chris's, used to be a student of Chris's. 5 years ago, he was my teacher. And I remember him at my very early stages of trying to practice solution-focused brief therapy. He said, and don't blush, Chris, that I don't have to be really good at it to do the job, because the questions are really powerful. So I might just as well get out of the way and ask questions. And that made me question my responsibility that I have as a practitioner. And solution-focused brief therapy is so different from many other approaches in two ways. One is that we really believe that people we are talking with are and should be the experts in their lives. So not us. So that means that we don't have the answers for them. We can't have the answers for them. And instead what we do is, all we can do is ask them questions so that they can figure out themselves. And second, that people already have the resources that they need in order to find a way forward. And that way forward has to be defined together with them, not by us, not by others, but with them. And that made a huge difference, which brings me to answering the question how to maybe save ourselves from negative energy, or maybe stories that touch us, or maybe problem talks that we listen to. All we have to do is ask the next question. We don't have to do anything else, but that's not easy. Yeah? That might be so simple, but that's not easy to do. So we have to master the skill, as you have been trying to do today, while exercising, while practicing, to get another question in, and another, and another, and another, and we never know which one is going to make all the difference, because we are not the experts on what people can do or what they should do, but they can be. And if they get in touch with the confidence that they can do that, well, then probably that's our job done.
Now, there's a really nice question here, but I find it really hard to manage this. Oh, it's better. All right, from Anam Mughal. Do you want to pop up? your question about panic and anxiety, self-esteem is a really good question. I'd love to just, so where are you? Say hello. Can't find you. Ms. Anam or Anam Mughal. Say, I have a question about how we can overcome anxiety by using solution-focused brief therapy. Are you there? Please? Can you unmute yourself? No. It was a lovely question, and we could have done something nice with that. So, but I don't know where you are. Oh, well, she must have gone shy. No, you can't find her. Asir, can you? Oh, I see. Anam, would you like to unmute yourself, Anam? No?
Mr. Chris, she's the one who has a poor connection with the activity, so she can hear us, but she's facing some issues in speaking.
Oh well.
So I posted her question to your window.
I can't really answer the question without sort of demonstrating it. Could she try? Because she's muted at the moment. Could you try and unmute?
Let me try.
Can she unmute herself?
You can do that because you're the main host, so you can just simply click on that.
I can ask her to unmute, but she'll have to press her own button. Or a microphone button.
Let me try. मिस अनम, अगर आप हमें सुन रही हैं तो काइंडली अपना माइक अनम्यूट कर लें ताकि वो आपका क्वेश्चन जो है उनको आंसर दिया जा सके.
No.
Probably
okay.
she's around.
No, she had difficulty in the group as well, in the breakout group. So I think probably.
Okay. Can you see another question of Asir that we might spend some time on? I'll tell you what, Biba, you can interview me, just as a little demonstration. So, and I'll try and be the sort of person that that Anam is asking about. Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Off we go then.
So Chris, what are your best hopes from our talking together now?
A lot of the time, I'm all right, and get on with things. But I keep getting hit with sort of real bouts of anxiety, and I don't know what's happening to me really. I think I panic, I don't want to see my friends, I shut myself down, I avoid people, and I start to feel bad about myself, and I just don't know what's happening. I'm supposed to be starting my doctorate studies, and I don't know whether I'm up to it really. I don't know whether I'm good enough. So I don't know what to do.
Okay. And if our talking together was somehow useful, where would you hope it would lead to?
Well, I wouldn't be having these panics and anxieties, and I'd be able to get on with my work and get on with my friends and everything.
Okay.
I'm all right, but they just come, and I don't know where they come from.
Yeah. And if you kind of found some ways to get on with your work, get on with your friends, more often in the way that you'd like to, what difference would that make to you?
Well, I wouldn't have this background worry all the time, as even when things are going well or seem all right. I won't say things go well all the time, they go all right. I wouldn't have this background worry. So I'm always worried, am I going to have another panic attack? Am I going to get anxious? Maybe I should stay in today just in case I have a panic. So it's there, even though it's not full blast, it's there sort of in the background all the time. So I wouldn't have any of that, I suppose.
Okay. And if you didn't have to worry, what would you kind of be hoping to be seeing instead of worries?
Well, I'd be getting on, really. I wouldn't be kind of wasting time and I'd think, well, of course I can do a PhD, of course I'm good enough. I've always done well at school, and I've done well at university, so of course I'm good enough. I just wouldn't have these silly thoughts. I'd get on with it. I'd just get on with life, really.
Okay. And if our talking together sort of started the journey of you getting on with life, getting on with your work, would that be useful?
It would, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So suppose that you've found a way towards getting on with life in the way that is right for you. When might you notice it most?
I wouldn't have this nagging worry on the way to university.
On the way to university. What would you notice about yourself on the way to university that would kind of fit with you getting on with your life in the way that's right for you?
Well, I'd be looking forward to it because it's a subject, obviously, I'm a PhD, I'm doing something that I'm really interested in. I'll be looking forward to it and maybe even going in a bit earlier.
Okay. What difference might that make, going there a bit earlier?
Well, it means that I kind of hadn't sat at home procrastinating and thinking about whether I should go or not and trying to work out whether I was going to have a panic attack or not. I'd just got up and got ready and been wanting to get out. I'd been wanting to get out and get started.
You'd be wanting to get out and get started. Okay. And what might you notice about yourself on the way to university that tells you that you're looking forward to it and that you're excited about it?
I wouldn't get the bus. I wouldn't get the bus. I'd walk, but it's not a very pleasant walk. So actually, what I'd do if I was early, I could walk. It's a slightly longer way, but I'd walk. There's a park I can walk through that gets me almost to the university, so I could actually have a pleasant walk. So maybe I'd just I'd take a bit longer because I have the time, and get the exercise and walk through the park.
Okay. And what might you notice about the way you'd walk that would kind of fit with you getting on with life and looking forward to be going to uni?
I wouldn't have my head down.
Okay. What would you be doing instead?
I'd be looking around. Maybe I'd be smiling at people as I passed, or even greeting them. I'd be noticing things, noticing the trees, thinking about looking forward to the monsoon season finally coming to an end. I'd be scared. Tell you what, I wouldn't be annoyed at children screaming and shouting as they were playing.
Okay. Yeah. And who might you meet first at uni? I mean, do you work on your own or do you meet others?
I go to the library first, and they know me at the library, so it would be one of the librarians. Yeah.
Do you know that person? Have you seen them before?
Yes, I know them all. It's usually at that time. It's usually Salma.
Salma, okay. What do you think might Salma notice about you that would kind of be a sign to her that you have come in looking forward to becoming there
I'd be
You've had your
smiling.
walk.
Yeah,
You'd
I'd
be
be smiling.
smiling.
Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
smiling. Mhm.
Okay.
And be looking at her and smiling rather than just walking past and mumbling and
Uh-huh.
my head down. Let's look at her and smile at her.
Okay. And how do you think she might respond to be seeing you smiling?
Oh, she'd smile back. She's very friendly, and she does sometimes even try and cheer me up. So she
Okay.
would cheer me up.
Okay.
Okay, enough. Thank you, Biba. Thank you. I hope that helps with you, Anna. And another question.
Miss Kanza Wahid has raised her hand to ask a question.
Who's going to ask?
Miss Kanza Wahid, if you're hearing us, please.
Okay. Kanza, where are you? Where are you? Can you unmute yourself? Then we can hear you. Looking for you on all these wonderful people. Oh, Kanza Wahid, is that right?
Yes.
Where has she gone? There she is. Oh, Kanza, are you going to speak? You've unmuted yourself. Now you've muted yourself again. Unmute. Press your unmute button. Oops, wrong one. Where are you? All right. So, what's your question, Kanza? I can't hear you. Where have you gone? No, I can't get that. So, another question.
Mr. Aftab has another question. Mr. Aftab Nasir.
No, sorry, that was by mistake. I don't have any more. Thank you.
We do have some other questions. It's from Samra Shehzadi. She asked, can we apply the solution-focused therapy on problems faced by emotion dysregulation in our daily life issues, and how we can solve our emotional problems by using this therapy?
Well, I think if you're talking about personal problems, I don't know. I suppose you could talk to yourself. You can ask these questions of yourself. If I'm nervous about something, a bit worried about something, if I'm going to give a lecture and I've lost my confidence, I get worried, I might ask myself the question, let's imagine just 10 seconds before you begin speaking, all your confidence comes back and you are about to give one of your best lectures ever. What do you think you'll notice as you stand up to begin talking? What will you notice about yourself that tells you've got all your confidence back? So you can ask yourselves these questions. Let's say I wake up tomorrow and I'm absolutely in charge of my emotions. What will I notice? And if there's an emotion of anxiety you're worried about, and what will I notice as the anxiety starts to creep up on me? What would I notice that tells me that I'm in control of it, that it's not going to win? You might have questions like that. So you can just ask yourself these questions, see if it works. So what else have we got? Questions?
Then there is another question from Dr. Rabia Faruqi. Can solution-focused therapy be used on personality disorders like borderline personality disorder?
Yes, let me find you. So there was a very, 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 very nice psychiatrist who was the chief psychiatrist of one of London's biggest psychiatric hospitals, the Maudsley, and all the community services around there. So he was a very senior psychiatrist, a Nigerian man by origin. I think he was born in Nigeria. And he, after he officially retired, he still carried on working for a day a week in a clinic at the Maudsley Hospital, working only with people with personality disorders. So, but clearly, and he loved that work, he loved it. He said he wasn't sure how helpful it was to people, but all his colleagues were really appreciated him doing this. So, yes, we've seen quite a lot of people with personality disorders, including people that have been put in prison because of what they've done. It seems to make no difference. We work with people with severe learning difficulties, we work with little children, we work with people with Alzheimer's. There are three questions. We have three questions that we ask people. One is the outcome question, what are your best hopes? The other is a description of what their life would be like if their best hopes were realized, which we've been looking at a lot today. And the third question is how much of this are they already doing? If we take a close look at their lives now, we always discover that people are doing more than they think that's going to be helpful to them in life. So we want to know where somebody wants to get to, what it would be like when they get there, and what are they already doing that might help them. All our questions are one or other of those three questions in various forms, various levels of detail. And they seem to work whatever. I've worked with people with personality disorders, with all these. In fact, at Brief, we're a private clinic, so we have to earn all our own money. But over the 30 years, we've earned our money from running courses, and we've provided all our therapy free. And we've been particularly interested in clients where the other services are just not working. So we've seen lots of suicidal people, lots of teenagers in severe difficulty. We've done lots around abuse, domestic abuse, abuse of children. These are the areas that we've always been interested in. And we've never turned anybody away, never for anything. So we'll work with anybody.
Okay, we have another question from Miss Rabia Tanveer, where she's asking that how long is this therapy? The total duration, probably.
It depends how you do it. So when we started back in 1987, we took, 88, we took an average of 5 sessions. And this with people with big problems. Now we average more like 2 sessions. We haven't got any more effective. So even when we were just starting out, we had an 80% success rate, and it's the same now, with just a bit briefer. So the less you do, the briefer it is. So if you want to make it longer, you give people tasks, you get interested in their problems rather than in their futures. Between 2 and 5 sessions. On the other hand, we don't have any limit. So I've seen one client, I did see one client for 9 years, another client for 12 years. These were people in very difficult circumstances, which there was no way out of, so life was difficult. And they found it helpful just to seeing me once every 2 or 3 months, just to help them stay with it. So there's no limit, but on average, 2 or 3 sessions. The most common number of sessions is 1. For most people, for a lot of people, 1 session is enough.
All right. We have Miss Fiza Wahid. She has raised her hand to ask a question. Miss Fiza, kindly unmute yourself. Miss Fiza Wahid. Ji.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. I got you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you listen?
Can't hear you at the moment. I've lost it. Try it again. No, we can't hear you, I'm afraid, Fiza.
Okay, Dr. Asir has a question meanwhile.
Okay.
Yes, I also provide coaching to the corporate sector, and was wondering
Sinner.
how would solution-focused therapy, how would solution-focused coaching practice be any different from the therapy?
Biba does more coaching than me.
I have to give your answer that you told me. It's only one question different, one question more in therapy than in coaching, which is, go on, Chris, it's your answer.
This is just a slightly jokey answer, Asir. It's when people come for therapy and you ask them what are your best hopes, they'll often tell you first about the problem. So then we have to ask, what do you want instead? And then we go with that answer. When people come for coaching, and you ask what are their best hopes, they already have an answer, an outcome answer. They don't need to tell you about the problem. So my joke is that with therapy, it's one question more. But otherwise, it's the same. It's exactly the same.
Except that maybe, if I may, in corporations or organizations, when your client isn't an individual, but it's a corporation, which is the whole entity, there might be different types of interactions going on, like teams, groups, leadership, one-on-one. So the process would be similar, and maybe slower than one-to-one, which we would usually do in therapy, unless it's group therapy. That makes sense.
Biba is running, doing group coaching to the Slovenian government, which is going to take over the chairmanship of the European Community next year. And Biba is helping to prepare the senior managers to handle that job. So she does a lot of high-level coaching, but hold big teams, which is quite hard work. But otherwise, it's the same. And some years ago now, I did a 2-day course for one of Britain's leading coaching firms, which is a very exclusive company that only took people who'd been chief executives or similar in major industries. They were the only people they allowed to come and join them as coaches. So there was the ex-chief executive of Marks and Spencer, which is one of Britain's biggest companies. There was the deputy head of the stock exchange. There were these very, very, very big time figures. One of the people that had just come back from dinner with the Clintons when Clinton was president of the USA. So they're mixed in very high circles, people I would never normally meet. But 10 years later, I was talking to one of their members, and they said they've had all the major solution focus, all the major coaching leaders in the world come and talk to them. And the approach which was most useful, more than anything, was solution focused coaching. And that's the thing that stayed with them. They weren't all solution focused, but they used solution focused ideas more than any others. So it's a fantastic way of coaching, I think. And yeah, I do a little bit as well, but not as much as Biba.
All right, shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, we do have two more questions. One is from Mr. Tayyib Ali. He's asking
Okay.
that if there are multiple selves and they are projecting different future pictures, these future selves are in conflict with each other, then how can this therapy help?
Well, this is a question for Biba again. You do all this group work stuff, don't you, Biba?
Yeah.
I can answer with families. You can answer with organizations.
Okay. Just maybe to clarify the question, was that multiple selves within one person or multiple people in the same room?
Probably Mr. Tayyib can answer this better. Mr. Tayyib, if you're listening to us, please unmute yourself and ask the question directly.
I got the private message. So it's multiple selves within oneself.
As within oneself, like multiple personalities.
Yeah.
I'd better answer that one.
Come on.
Yeah. Where are we? So I once had a client who he'd been diagnosed as a schizophrenic, and he was about 40, and in the past 20 years he'd had about 6 or 7 admissions to a psychiatric hospital. He would attempt suicide, get taken to hospital, be discharged, be okay for a while, and then make another suicide attempt and go back into hospital. So it was what psychiatrists in the UK sometimes call a revolving door situation. Anyway, he came to see me, referred by someone who'd done a course with us, and I asked him what his best hopes were. I think every question I asked him, instead of answering it, and it's the client's answer which is important, instead of answering it, he'd turn to his girlfriend, Julie, and ask her about it and get into a conversation with Julie. So this is very difficult. And then he told me that the reason he tried to commit suicide was when Julie was cross with him, she told him to go and kill himself. And that's why he went to commit suicide. But I couldn't get him to answer my questions, mostly. He kept turning to Julie. So in the end, I said to him, Henry, would you mind if I asked Julie some questions? And he said, he looked at me a bit strangely and said, all right then, okay. And then I said, well, look, obviously, I can't see Julie, so you'll have to be her for me. And he said, okay. So, and I interviewed Julie out of his mouth. And it turned out that Julie, who was obviously an hallucination, because I couldn't see her, he could see her, but I couldn't. It turned out that though Julie kept telling him to go and kill himself, she didn't really want him to. So I asked Julie to tell me what Henry needed to do to stay safe when she was cross. And she came up with a very, very, very detailed plan for Henry, what Henry needed to do when she got cross with him and told him to kill himself. And I saw Henry 6 times over 3 years. So there's long gaps between them. In fact, between the 5th and the 6th time, there was a whole year. In that year, he had no more admissions to hospital. His mental state was perfectly stable. He'd even got a job, which nobody expected him to be able to do. And he never brought Julie with him again. But he always let me know that she was still around. He'd say things like, oh, when I went to the cinema last week with Julie. So he was still seeing Julie, but was no longer trying to kill himself, and had become much, much happier. So that was one. Another person I was interviewing, she had 11 personalities that she knew of, but she knew there was some more behind that she couldn't meet, but they were because she could hear their voices. And she was quite rational. She said, I'm sure these are different aspects of my personality that I've split off, but they're still real. And there was one 7-year-old, 7 or 4-year-old, which I think she was a 7-year-old, called Annie. And she became these people. And she didn't know, the only way she knew that she'd been one of these people is by either, if she woke up in hospital, she knew that she'd been somebody called Mrs. Barnett. Because when she became Mrs. Barnett wanted to kill herself, so she attempted suicide. But sometimes she was this little 7-year-old girl, Annie, and she knew she'd been Annie when she came downstairs in the morning and saw all the kitchen chairs had been moved. Because when she was Annie, she liked to sit under the kitchen table. So she didn't remember sitting under the kitchen table, but she knew she'd been there because the chairs had been removed. Anyway, one day she said she was feeling really upset and she decided to go to bed early. And she was in bed and something happened which had never happened before. One of her personalities came into the room with her. So there were 2 of them together, and it was Annie. Annie came rushing in and said, "Where's the table? Where's the table?" And my client said, "Oh my goodness, I moved it yesterday because we had visitors, and I moved it into another room because we needed a bigger table. I'll come and put it back." So she had to come back and put the table back in the kitchen so Annie could sit underneath it. And Annie said, "Will you sit with me?" And she said, "Yes." So she sat under the table with Annie, and Annie said, "You know what happened to me?" And at that point, my client remembered that at that age, she'd been abused. And so she said, "Yes, do you want to talk about it?" So Annie, who was my client when she was 7, spoke to my client now that she's 40 and talked about the abuse. And Annie felt much better because Annie had thought it was her fault. But what her older person told her was that it wasn't her fault. And the strange thing was that Annie disappeared from my client's life. And later on, the Mrs. Barnett, who was the one that wanted to kill her, came, and instead of asking her to kill her, she asked her to dance. Because at one time in her life, she'd loved dancing. So she danced with Mrs. Barnett all night with loud music. She had no memory of it until her neighbor said, "You were playing very loud music last night." And then she remembered that she danced with Mrs. Barnett, and she thought she'd no longer want to kill herself. So very, very, very weird working with lots of people with lots of cells, but that's their experience. We just get on and do it. We get on. What are your best hopes? And this client just wanted to lead a normal life. So that's what we were working at, but all these other people came into it. And so it is weird. It is weird, this solution focused stuff. But as I say, we'll work with anybody over anything. And what Biba would have said if you'd been talking about lots of different people, like family members or members of a team, but all want different things, you just keep working at asking what difference will that make, what difference will that make, until you find some common aim that they can all, not necessarily common aim, but you find that an outcome, they each have an outcome which doesn't get in the way of other people's outcome. Like if it's a team that's in trouble, people might want to feel that they could be happy coming into work. They might all want to feel that they could get on with each other. They might all want to feel that they could do a good job. So you'd look for outcomes that are not necessarily identical, but don't conflict with each other, whether it's a team or a family.
Okay, should we move on?
Yeah.
We have one question from Miss Nimra. She's asking about how can we end our session while using SFPD?
If you're really confident, you just stop, like me. If people expect, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour, I just usually end by saying I think I've run out of questions. But that's quite, you have to be quite confident to do that. So another way, the traditional way to end, is just to give the client some positive feedback, some affirmative feedback. Just give the client a couple of compliments. Say, look, I'm really impressed with how you handled those difficulties that you've had to handle. And I'm really impressed that even though you had such a difficult time of your own, you could still be kind to your mother. And that shows a great family loyalty. So you'd be just listening during the session for things to give some feedback to. And if you really, really, really think, oh my God, I can't leave a client without giving them something to do, the best task is what we call a noticing task. So you can say, between now and when we next meet, look out and make a note of everything that happens in your life that you would like to have continue to happen. Notice the things that you want to hang on to in your life, so we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So that's, you can just finish by stopping because you've run out of time, or you can finish with some compliments. And if you need to give a task, you can give it a noticing task rather than a doing task.
All right, we have one more question with us from Ms. Sidra Malik. She's asking that, do you focus on outcomes as a therapist for each client when it comes to solution-focused therapy? And how do you do that if that's applicable?
If that what? How do I do that? What was the last little bit of that?
That how do you do that if it's applicable? Like, do you focus the outcomes as a therapist for each client when it comes to solution-focused therapy? And how do you do that if it's applicable?
If it's, I don't quite understand the question. Every client, we ask, what are your best hopes? And we ask these questions. That's what we do. And if it's there's no way of knowing whether it's applicable because there's no research that gives us that information. People have been trying to find out, are the particular clients it works with better or not? It seems to be work pretty much the same, whatever the problem. So anybody who comes through our door at Brief, my clinic, there'll be an 80% chance that life will improve and stay improved. There's a 50% chance that it will improve enormously and stay improved. And there's a 20% chance that we'll fail.
Ms. Sidra is basically asking that, do we record the outcomes and make progression plans moving forward when the therapy ends?
No. I mean, we don't make plans for this client when the therapy ends.
Let's say if some person is having, like you are calling a patient 4 to 5 times. So do you keep a record of the previous sessions and then you generate some outcomes and then you plan something more like to ask in the next session?
No, if somebody comes, say, so what example could we use? The procrastination, wanting to get on and get the paper written, the PhD done or the research done or whatever, something like that. We've done our first interview. Let's imagine you wake up and we've seen how that works. When somebody comes back for the second time, we'd ask what's better. We'd ask what's better, and we'd explore anything that they'd done in the time between the therapy sessions that was useful. And then we would, when we found out what was better, we might say, and if things continue to improve, what might you notice next? So we just work with the issue the client comes with. So each subsequent session, we'll ask what's better. And we'll ask lots of questions about how did you do that, and so on and so forth. And we wouldn't be making a brief anyway. We wouldn't be making plans or anything like that with somebody. So we'd work towards the outcome that they'd come to therapy for, and when they'd got there, we'd stop. And mostly clients stop by not coming back. and every now and again we've done outcome research just to check on these clients, check on our clients, what the level of outcomes are, which is how we know that consistently 80% have said there's been some lasting improvement, 50% have said there's been a very big improvement, and 20% of people we've just not managed to do a good job with, we failed them. And there's no, we don't, despite years and years and years of research by various people around the world, we haven't found reasons. We don't know why it fails. But we don't think it's to do with the client. We think it's probably to do with us just not getting the right questions in, just not doing a good job. And being human, obviously, we're not going to do a good job.
Right. I think we're approaching the end of the session. Thank you very much, Chris Iveson, and thanks a lot, Biba Rebolj. Is that how you pronounce your name? Rebolj? Okay. I would say that, yes, we learned an incredible amount. This was an amazing opportunity given to us by Chris. As I said, his generosity with his time and the way he answered all the questions. I'm so ever grateful for your time. And, I would also like to say that we would like to remain in touch. And there is a large group of psychologists that want to develop further skills in solution-focused therapy as well as coaching. And we hope to have this, as an ongoing relationship. So, well, any last word? You have the last word, Chris.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Asir, inviting me here. I know I kind of pushed myself under your nose as well, but it was a it was Asir's Facebook friendship request that started this off, because he has the same surname as a colleague of mine who has written about solution focus, particularly working in schools, Yasmin Ajmal. And so I got in touch and said, oh, are you any relation to Yasmin? But he wasn't, but then he told me about his solution focused interest. And I just wanted to meet a group of people who I didn't know were doing solution focus, and just learn. And your questions have been very, very similar to questions we get at home. And it's been a great pleasure. And then really, just yesterday, I asked Biba if she would be free to join us, because I thought she would be nice to have another little person around. And so thank you to Biba as well for coming in, and thank you for my little interview. Thank you all. It's been a real pleasure, and I'd love to meet you again.
But before we go, can we sing happy birthday to Chris Iveson? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
May you live long, Chris. Eat lots of cake tonight. So
thank you.
stay blessed, sir. Stay blessed. Stay happy always.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, dear sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear sir. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank